people will say, I'm so sorry that she has spina bifida. And I'm like, I'm not sorry. Like this is exactly who she is. And there is nothing sad or depressing about her life. And there are hard things, there are hard days ahead. And I know that.
Welcome to Tune In the First 3 Years. Today I have a super special guest. Her name is Kate, and I have the privilege of seeing her daughter in the AZIP program that I work in. And we have been, how long have we known each other? Maybe 3 months?
I think so.
I think it's about 3 months. And I want to say one thing about Kate is, like, honestly, and I probably have never told you this, but pretty much the minute I met you, I just felt like I felt a connection with you. And I just felt like this, like, peace and calm and just like joy that radiated from you. And I just, like, when I
Mm.
walked in your house, I was like, oh, I could like exhale every time I went in there. And that's not always the case in our program. So I just wanted to share that with you because I felt that like right away with you. And now as our relationship and our, work relationship has grown, like I like my intuition is usually spot on.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. That's so sweet. I actually felt the same way about you because I came in kind of, with your guard up. You don't really know how you're going to connect, but I felt the exact same way. So it's funny that you say that.
Aw, awesome. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to talk about Kate's daughter, who is 14 months now.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, 14 months. And I want you to take us back to that moment at 20 weeks when you knew something was not typical with your pregnancy.
So we had just gotten back from a trip, and the trip felt perfectly timed because we went blissfully unaware. We went to Germany, and it was over Christmas, and we had an amazing time and got home. And January 2nd, I went in to the anatomy scan. I was alone, and I remember them taking some extra scans of her spine. And I didn't remember that from previous pregnancies, but I also didn't think anything of it. But I sat after the ultrasounds were finished. They printed them out, and I went back to the waiting room until they were going to call me back to meet with the doctor. So I just sat in the waiting room looking at the pictures, and I just had this feeling that was very specific, that just I knew that she was coming into our family and that she was going to be very special. And I sent a picture of one of the scans. She looked so cute with her little arm, and you could see her profile to my husband. And he texted back and said, I just had a feeling that she is going to be very special. And so it was really cool for both of us to get that same feeling separately. We weren't even together, and we had no idea what was to come. So then I met with the nurse practitioner, and I was brand new to this office. I had never met her before. So that was a little bit jarring to receive the information from the nurse practitioner, was a little bit disappointing, honestly. Um, and she just said, we think something's wrong with her spine. Have you heard of spina bifida? And I hadn't really. So she explained kind of the markings and what was to come. They were going to send me to a high risk doctor, maternal fetal medicine doctor. So that was kind of the extent of the conversation. And then I walked back out, starting to get a little bit emotional. And they were going to do some blood work. And I was about to do the blood work, and one of the doctors at the office said, Hey, are you okay? Do you want to come back and meet with me? So I was really appreciative that she took the time to explain a little further, show me the scans, and kind of tell me in her experience what she had seen. That was really reassuring, and I was really grateful for that. So, yeah, just that first appointment was definitely, it was very nerve-wracking, but to start it knowing that we both had that kind of special feeling was really unique.
Yeah. Can you like explain like what it felt like in your body, your heart, like as you were processing the news in the office?
Well, we were both religious people, my husband and I, and so we talk a lot about kind of those promptings, and it's something that we've talked a lot about throughout our lives, just kind of recognizing when God is trying to speak to you. And in, we're religious, not everybody is, but it just felt unmistakable. It was like in my heart, in my mind, a clear feeling, distinct impression of she is special, she is unique, she is known, and um, she's going to come into your family. I honestly just felt really privileged, and he would say the same.
Like almost like an immediate acceptance in some ways.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
In a lot of ways, before we even knew the diagnosis, it was just we went into it with a lot of confidence, like, yep, this is going to be what it's supposed to be.
Right. And then, but not knowing what, like not knowing about the surgery and not knowing anything like that at that point yet.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So
No.
after that, what was your next step after that? You got the scan and you found out that she probably had that. So
Yeah.
what did they advise for you to do?
So I went home and, of course, started researching spina bifida. I had about 4 days between that appointment and the high risk doctor appointment. And so I had made my own decision. My husband probably thought I was crazy for going into so much detail on my own before we really even had a confirmed diagnosis, but I wanted to go into the appointment prepared. And I had been researching spina bifida. I had found Texas Children's Hospital in Houston and knew that they were the ones who pioneered this in utero surgery. So I knew if I had the chance, I would ask the doctor to send our referral to Texas. I know that there were other locations that offered the surgery, but I wanted to be in Houston because that's where the original surgery was created and initially performed. Um, this is different than the surgery coming out of Vanderbilt, which was a complete um, C-section where they cut you open completely at the uterine level. But the one they created at Texas Children's was laparoscopically. So they were using probes to go into the uterus, which was a lot less invasive. And that's what I was interested in. So by the time we met with the high risk doctor, we did an amniocentesis and he did another ultrasound to confirm the findings. And it was a pretty short appointment. He said, I can send your, yes, she confirmed diagnosis of spina bifida. I can send your referral to Tucson. They do the surgery at U of A, or I've had one patient go to Texas. And I said, I would like to go to Texas. And he said, great. So he sent a referral. I actually wasn't expecting it to be that easy, but he said, if it's not an option for everybody, but if it's you have the means and opportunity, then great if you want to. So there was no pushback. He sent it to Texas, and then they called and got the process started pretty much immediately. So Texas Children's reached out to me. They have to get the ball rolling pretty quickly because you have a short window. I had already been in my anatomy scan at 22 weeks. So I was a little bit already later than typical. And I believe they do the surgery until about 25 or 26 weeks, is the last day you can do the surgery. So we were flying to Texas. I believe it was like the next week we were flying to Texas. So it was a pretty short turnaround.
Yeah. So what did that look like for your family? I mean, you have an older daughter,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
she came with us. It was a lot of unknowns, and I honestly didn't want to get my hopes up that we were candidates for the surgery. Luckily, we were connected with another family who my husband went to high school with, and we had followed their experience. They had had the same diagnosis, the same in utero surgery. He was 3 at that time. So we had kind of followed their story, but I connected with her before we went to Texas and just said, what should I expect? And she said, honestly, just go into it as if this were just an assessment and not necessarily the surgery. So we packed for a weekend and ended up being there for 4 months. But we just packed really light. We didn't want to get our hopes up and it not work out because it's not an option for everybody. So we just went out thinking we're just going for an MRI and that's it.
Wow. I don't think I knew that part. So how did you navigate a weekend bag into 4 months?
I know. I know. A lot of support. We really were the whole I really speak for so like just my husband and I, like we just couldn't have done it without the village behind us. And I just cannot even think about Texas without thinking about the community of people that rallied around our family, both of our families who immediately started praying for us and sending gifts. And my husband, I have an uncle that lives in Texas near Texas Children. So we ended up staying with him for 2 months. And um, my mother-in-law came out, and my mom came out, and my sisters came out. So we just had a lot of support. But the initial weekend was very overwhelming because you meet with every specialist involved in the surgery one on one for an hour. So
Oh,
I think
wow.
it was about an 8 hour day plus another day for all of the imaging and testing. They do an MRI, which is crazy because it's an MRI for her. And so she's not sitting very still through the MRI. So it ended up being, I think it was 2 hours that I was inside the MRI machine because they're trying to get perfect pictures of her without her wiggling. And then it's also a fetal echocardiogram to make sure that her heart could handle surgery. You meet with I'm trying to remember, genetic counselor, anesthesiologist, neonatologist, neurosurgeon, a high risk OB surgeon, a pediatric surgeon. So it just across the board, it was two
Wow.
long days. And I think I was expecting them to be a little bit more encouraging of the surgery, which I'm understanding now that's not how medicine works. No one can encourage you to do anything. But I think I felt like I was going into it like, if we are candidates for the surgery, we are 100% doing the surgery. And then we got out of these 2 days of meetings, and I was so unsure. It was very overwhelming because they have to present all of the risks. And it was very overwhelming to think about all of the what ifs that could go wrong because they legally have to present you with everything that could happen. And it was very hard to make the decision. We made it a matter of prayer and ultimately felt that same peaceful feeling just helping us continue and say yes. And I remember walking home from the hospital after the long day with my husband. My mother in law had our 3 year old at the time all day and was such a big help. And we were walking home, and my brain was fried from the information that I was just trying to, like, it was like drinking from a fire hydrant, trying to gather everybody's information and ask the questions that you thought would be insightful. And I think what really helped us decide, in addition to feeling peaceful about it, was thinking about it from my daughter's perspective. This unborn baby that hadn't come yet, I was just picturing her, I don't know why, at like 10 or 11 years old, and thinking, what would she say if she saw us in this moment? And of course, she would say yes. She would want any opportunity for to preserve this mobility that we're seeing on these ultrasounds. She's kicking, she's wiggling her toes, she's kicking her legs, and thinking, if we have the shot at preserving this for her, she would 100% want us to do that. So that's what ultimately helped us make the decision.
I was just going to ask you, like the whole idea of the surgery was not, it wasn't necessarily life or death. It was preserving more motor function and especially the lower half of her body, right?
Correct, correct. Yeah. So the intention of the surgery is in the third trimester, the nerves that are exposed in the back, the are it's mostly when the damage occurs is in the third trimester. And it's because the amniotic fluid turns toxic to the nerves. So that's why they created the surgery, was to preserve the nerves that were not damaged at that point. So it's not, I think that's what made it such a hard decision. Was it wasn't life or death. It was an option with risks. And but once they gave us the green light that she was strong and healthy and could handle the surgery, what do you guys want to do? Um, we of course didn't know it was going to entail as much as it did, but we felt peaceful about it. And so I think when um, it ended up being a 4 month stay in Texas, we just kept referring back to that feeling and knowing it was right then, so it has to be right now.
And just to give everybody a little insight, she is crawling and she is pulling up to stand, like she just wants to stand, and then she's got a stander. So I mean, clearly it's hard to tell like what would she be like now if she didn't have the surgery? We don't know. But
Yeah.
typically children with spina bifida are not doing that soon. So,
Yeah.
I mean, clearly you see the wins that happen from the surgery. So
Yes.
she is cute. She is cute as a button. She's the sweetest little disposition and definitely fiery, but like in a good way. Not like it's
Yeah.
not like she's defiant. She's so
No.
motivated to do things. Like nothing is going to
Yes.
stop her.
We keep hearing that about her. She's very determined. She's very persistent. She finds her way of doing it, which has just been remarkable to see. And I know a lot of families are encouraged by the data that they're finding about the reduced risk of needing a shunt as well to um, when performing the in utero surgery, which wasn't the case for us. We ended up needing a shunt, but they are delaying the need for a shunt. And our neurosurgeon said he's never dragged his feet as long as he is now because of the surgery, which has been a huge benefit, even if you end up needing a shunt, to not have that placed at birth and to give them a little longer to grow and develop is even a win for
Yeah.
us.
Well, awesome. She's doing well. So I want to ask you some questions about you. So how has your understanding of motherhood shifted through this experience, like from pregnancy to now?
Oh, this is a good one. I think it just kind of broadened my view. I think I just see everything with a zoomed out lens now because you picture your life in one direction and then it completely shifts. And all of a sudden, you were looking at everything through a microscope and now you're looking at it just completely zoomed out. I think just because the impossible happened and you are still here. And so you just see, I don't know, the small bumps in the road look very small because you're handling things much bigger than you ever
Yeah,
thought capable.
totally makes sense. Great answer. I think that'll help a lot of people. I mean, I think when you're in that situation, it feels so heavy at the time, but then it really puts the perspective on life,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so what I want to ask you, like, what you would want other parents to know. So for parents that have just received a diagnosis, they feel overwhelmed, they feel afraid. What would you want them to hear from somebody who's walked this road?
Um, I feel like one of the biggest things I've learned is having a child with medical needs. All of a sudden, you are advancing very quickly into you're enrolled in some really hard classes, and everybody else around you feels like you feel like everyone else is in second grade, and you are enrolled in a doctorate, a PhD program. And it's not to say that you're better than anybody else or that you're smarter than anybody else or that you're stronger. It's just the nature of your timeline versus other people's. And they will get their own PhD classes, but they are not enrolled yet. And you are. So I think it's having a lot of grace with yourself, with all of the mixes of emotions that comes with an unexpected diagnosis, the doubt, fear, anxiety, guilt, anger. I mean, those are just going to come.
And letting them in, like
Yeah.
yeah, like the wave. I think most
Yeah.
people don't let them in. They try to suppress it, or
Right.
I'm sure you heard so many things that maybe were not helpful, right? To you
Yes.
sometimes the toxic positivity and it's going
Yeah.
to be okay, but then
Yeah.
that it doesn't allow you to feel those feelings, which actually pushes the grief further down.
Right. Right. I think just feeling how you feel, my therapist always says emotions are like the weather. So how are we feeling today? Let's go check the weather. And I think allowing that has been really healthy. It's helped my husband and I just connect in a way that we've never before connected, just feeling how we feel and being open and honest about it. Um, but I think because you see yourself enrolled in these super hard classes, it's going to feel easy to, number one, feel maybe sorry for yourself, or number two, feel like nobody understands you. And I've definitely played those cards a lot in the last year, and it's never served me very well. So I think when you see yourself on a different path and it's completely separate from other people, then you stop comparing and you stop feeling sorry for yourself and you just see these are the courses I'm on and this is the path that I'm on. If people are trying to show up and love and support, let them. Let them in their very imperfect ways. They are going to fail, they're going to do it wrong, but so am I, you know?
Right.
I think it's just taught me a lot about this interpersonal communication and like relationships because we needed a lot of help in Texas. And I was in the hospital for 6 weeks until she was born, which means I needed full time care for my daughter. My husband was still trying to work remote. And I think I just learned a lot of humility in allowing other people to help, and maybe they make comments that are not helpful. And um yeah, I think it taught me a lot about I'm going to see myself in a different path and that's okay.
Hmm. Yeah, and having grace for those other people too, because they just don't know what to say. They've never
Yeah.
walked that walk, and they want to help you, and they want you
Yeah.
to not feel sad or not feel a certain way. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I will say the emotions that come, they never last as long as you think they will. You think you're eternally going to feel stressed or guilty or upset or frustrated or tired, and it's always a season. It's always just a wave that you're riding, and turns out there's a lot of happiness and joy and excitement to be had, and that's overwhelmingly going to still be your life.
yeah. And I always remember people saying you won't have the joy to the extent that you do if you don't have the sorrow and the pain and all the
Totally.
other emotions. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Looking back, where have you found unexpected strength, beauty, or connection in her story, your
Oh,
story?
I loved this question. When I was hospitalized until I had the baby, I met another friend on the floor with me who had just had the same surgery, same diagnosis, and same timeline where we were both just kind of deer in the headlights, like what is happening right now? And we became super close because we were stuck in the hospital together. We ended up having our babies around the same time, just days apart. And then we were both living in the Ronald McDonald House for 2 months while our babies were in the NICU. She was from out of state, I was from out of state. And we just became super close and we still talk every day to this day.
Oh,
And it's just this unlikely friendship and our paths never would have crossed
yeah.
without this experience. So that's definitely when I think of silver linings from the whole experience, it's her and it's someone to walk this whole journey with.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, how unlikely for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just has felt like all along the way there's these miracles that happened that um I think just continue to show me that my capacity is growing through this experience, and I just want others to know that too, that you will grow to that you will rise to the challenge, and your capacity will you'll be so surprised at what you can handle. And yeah, it's not that you know people say you're so strong, I don't know how you do it. It's not because of you being stronger, it's you have no choice, you know. It's it's that or crumble, and that's not a choice, you know. So
Mhm.
I think you just see yourself in a different light, and you have all of these really special experiences along the way that remind you this is not a detour in my story. This is definitely part of my story. I know that God has a plan for me, for her. And it's also just reminded me like people will say, I'm so sorry that she has spina bifida. And I'm like, I'm not sorry. Like this is exactly who she is. And there is nothing sad or depressing about her life. And there are hard things, there are hard days ahead. And I know that. But I don't think that just because this is part of her story that she has this, you know, um dark cloud over her life. She is destined for just as much happiness and joy and excitement and fun as anybody else.
Well, that your girls are so blessed to have you and your husband, and I feel so blessed too to have our paths cross because of this. Had this not happened, our paths would not cross. So you have been such a light shining in my life too, and it's such a joy to work with her, and I am excited to continue on the journey with her and you and your family.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.